What's up, everybody? Welcome to the quarterfinals of the Nerd Street Gamers Open Qualifiers that will eventually feed into the very first professional top tier Valorant event. Yes, I am talking about First Strike. But before we get into that, I am going to be one of your casters this evening, Nari Mizuki. Joined with me is Moxie. Moxie, how are you feeling?
Oh, I'm ready, Sam. I am absolutely pumped for this match because these teams that we're going to get to see today, first in the series, are teams that have met. You know, they have that pedigree, they have that history, and just like every other team sitting at that level in Valorant, they've met each other quite a fair few times before.
And before we jump into the information about the teams, let's give a little bit of a rundown about how this tournament works. So, of course, we started out 3 days ago with 128 teams. All matches, best of 3, single elimination bracket. They have slugged it out for the past 2 days. It was an absolute bloodbath. There's been, tears. There's been joy. There's been a lot of that stuff in between. Some teams dropped out. That was unexpected. Some teams have made it all the way here today. And, let's tell the viewers what they win for getting here today. Now, of course, it's not going to be any kind of money. This is, of course, just a qualifier. But the top 16 teams, and that's these 8 teams, they're already in it. Just because they won their matches yesterday, they're in. They're sorted. They're going through to the closed qualifier, and that's going to be from the 4th to the 8th of November. So that's really, really exciting stuff for these teams. Right now, they're just duking it out, I believe, for seeding. So that's pretty important. And of course, one of these things we talk about, like, are these teams going to take it seriously? There's no money on the line. There's, what's the point? Seeding. That is the point. The higher your seed, the quote-unquote easier your first or your bracket run should be. Theoretically, of course. So now let's head on over to today's match. It's going to be T1 versus Envy. Moxie, what can you tell me about these two teams?
Okay, Sam, buckle in. We're going on a little bit of a nostalgic trip. Cast your mind back to the 27th of August. We had Pop Flash, Envy up against T1. Envy win 2-1, but we had some pretty close matches, including that map of Split, which ended 17-15. Sam, and Split hasn't been banned out, so we could well be going there today if this match goes the entire way.
Oh, that is entirely a possibility. These two teams have slugged it out against each other more times, I think, than what they would be comfortable with. And of course, my favorite storyline from this whole thing is the fact that Envy very recently yoinked Crashies and Food from T1. They've bolstered their own roster with players from the enemy team. Now, you got to be thinking, there's a lot of tension there, right? T1 are like, you should have stayed. And we're going to prove to you why you should have stayed. And we're also going to show you that we don't need you. Envy, on the other hand, Crashies and Food are like, you know what? You should have built your team around us, and we're going to show you why. There's a lot to prove here for both of these teams. It's not just about seeding. Bragging rights are on the line.
I mean, you're going to be keeping an eye on those two, but I've personally been waiting for this matchup. Ska and Mame, come on. Those two Jet players, they've been doing such monstrous runs in terms of kill to death ratio. It's been absolutely insane what they've been able to achieve. I think Mame was something like 21-15 in one match in terms of kill to ratio, and that was one that they lost.
And the other interesting thing about Skadoodle is, of course, he started out as a Sage player way back in beta. I don't know how many of you in Twitch chat were around way back in beta, but Skadoodle firmly cemented himself in my mind as one of my favorite Sage players. He played the defensive operator. He was phenomenal. And then he kind of went onto the inactive roster for a little while, and things seemed a little dire. T1 played around with other players, tried to, find some different ways of fleshing out their team. But in the end, you always come back to Skadoodle. And I gotta say, the amount of value that he's been getting on this Jet, a lot of people said, oh, he's a Sage player. He's not going to do well on any other hero. He's like a one trick. No, friends. They didn't pick him up as a Sage player. They picked him up as an op player. And now with Sage fairly firmly in the off-meta area, he's free to wreak absolute havoc with the operator on the jet. And that is exactly what he's been doing. So, Mame, you better watch out.
I mean, you talk about him on the jet, but we've also, over the past couple of days, been throwing a couple of curveballs in which agent Scare decides to come out on. We've seen him play the Raze. And it's an interesting thing as well, right? You look at the Raze, you look at the playstyle, you think, Raze isn't typically the person carrying an operator around, and we actually do tend to see them sort of move away from that operator-heavy playstyle when he's on the Raze. Instead, he gets given the Bulldog, and they like to use it as a sort of way of getting around a forced buy, where you come in with that Bulldog, and yes, you're going to be lacking in firepower, but because Raze has those utilities like Satchel Packs, which can create so much damage that you don't actually feel a difference. It's very similar to Jets popping at Bladestorm when they're on a forced buy.
Yeah. And bearing in mind, one of the main reasons that we see the operator play on the Jet is because of Jet's mobility, made more so because of the recent nerfs to jump peeking and, of course, the nerf to the operator in itself. And Raze can still get a little bit of that mobility if you use those blast packs to get in and out. Of course, like, top choice is the Jet. And it is interesting, you and I were talking, we were watching two different maps at the same time while we were trying to like gather information on these two teams. And I was like, oh yeah, Jet, Skadoodle doing so well. And you were like, wait a second, Jet, don't you mean Raze? And so as they kind of moved through the bracket, the very first game they played in the round of 128, we saw him on the Jet. And I believe it was on Bind. And then as they moved through the bracket, suddenly on Bind, he was on the Raze. And it was really surprising to see, trying out new strats, different team. Maybe you're going to find some different value with the Raze over the Jet. But that all comes down to what are they going to play today? Our first map, we spoke about it already, it's going to be Ascent. So Moxie, what are you expecting to see from these two teams on Ascent?
Okay, this is going to be a big old race for who's going to be able to hit the economy to get an operator. Simple as. Every single map of Ascent turns into the exact same thing when an operator is on play for either side. Mid-control is just immediately shut down. It's insane how much space that one weapon can combine. It's a little bit more difficult now to be able to buy that out of your pocket now that the price has gone up to 5,000 credits. But that does set the stage for that sort of cheaper operator, the alternative, the Marshall, to come into fruition. And this is something actually that T1 does a lot when they lose that first round in pistols. They'll actually force themselves onto a Marshall so they can still have that same amount of spatial control as an operator when you're running up against light armor. It's still enough to hit you off on one shot.
Well, we're going to be starting off here with Envy on the defense. And of course, this is just a pistol round. So taking a look at these defaults, we're going to have the Reyna and the Omen over towards the A side, going to be holding there. And of course, FNS chilling in mid here. They don't want to give up mid control too easily. And well, Sova on B, name a more iconic duo, am I right?
Well, he doesn't quite have the Odin just yet. So that duo is only going to become more iconic as these rounds progress. As we're just waiting for T1 to make a move. Oh, Skadoodle run right into FNF. The trade is there.
That was fantastic play there, pushing through onto mid, using those smokes for a little bit of utility. FNS was the only man holding in mid, and now as we see T1 pushing onto point, they've managed to bring themselves to a 4v2. This is fantastic numbers for them. And they're just not stopping yet, continuing to shut down this defense. Haven't planted the spike just yet. Seems to be playing very... Oh my goodness, they've given up so much time and space. Left. And Mume able to get the kill onto Brax. Now it's a 1v2. They do eventually take him down, but my goodness, they took their time with that one.
Something we should really quickly talk about as well is that Envy don't have a Jet. This is Ascent, and they're running with a Phoenix and a Reyna. In fact, they've even got Mame on that Omen, so you have a lot of control over how the enemy operator is going to operate with those smokes, where you just, cloak down that space, that sightline to immediately shut it down and force them away. But you're going to be relying on the Reyna instead, and yes, she has survivability, but she doesn't have anywhere near the mobility, at least in terms of upwards.
And now that T1 have won the first pistol round, they will buy a little bit, and we've got a split push here. One moving through Catwalk just to deny some space there. Brax, of course, on the lurk, manages to get two! That is ridiculous! Just chilling down on B side. He is absolutely clear. And of course, they'll get a follow-up kill over on the A site as well. Last man standing for Envy. That's the round. That's a pretty solid offense from T1.
They know exactly where he is too. Spider's just gonna shut the door on him. And that plan should be coming through. If you're FNS, you just want to try and keep yourself intact. Better yet, take one member from T1 out before you can to try and cripple that economy. Because right now you've lost 2 rounds in a row. And that means you're going to be going into this third phase, this very important round. That we tend to see teams, that's the reason why a lot of people always eat to push on that second round, right? Because they want to be better set up for this one that's now beginning. But because you haven't been able to cripple T1, you can already see some members from Envy still have not been able to fully invest. They've managed to get weapons, sure, but they've got Caboose running on light armor.
But it does give them a little bit of an advantage because, of course, they're going full rifles, whereas T1 opting, of course, to hold on to the Spectres that they had from the previous round. And again, we've got the split push here. We've got AZK over in mid this time, supporting Brax towards the B site. A little bit slow, a little bit more methodical this time around. Not wanting to push in unnecessarily, give away too much information. The spike is, of course, more towards A. And they're waiting for that information to know that it's safe to push. They've given up mid here, which isn't the worst thing in the world, especially because Envy seem to think that it's going to be a mid to B push.
T1 just looking to get on this A site. Drone is out, they're just getting a lot of information. There's only an Omen, and now with Clover rotating over to Rafters. If you're T1, you can absolutely press in on this, and they want to, but the second that they start to make a move, they have to get in so quick. Because as soon as Envy see that spike on A, they're going to go for this rotation. That Reyna can be so very deadly if she's able to catch you out. But they get T1 so hesitant. They don't want to commit, but their hesitation is I could get off bigger than them. Envy think the rotation's going to come through, and that's over abandoned his post.
And they've managed to get the first pick onto the A site. Spider teleports onto site and throws out the smokes to give themselves a little bit of dark cover here as he goes for the plant. But of course, the drone is coming through to catch some sites. Spike will go down. We're looking for post-plant positions here from T1. Can they hold this down? Food manages to take down AZK. Manages to get 2. And he still has the hot hand, so that's some healing available and the wall up to deny some sight lines. This is still very winnable for Envy at a 3v2. And we've got Dazed so far away. Does have the Hunter's Fury available. And since the spike has gone down, he's holding on to that, waiting for the sound of the defuse to come through. There's the sound. And there's the Hunter's Fury. Does he manage to get one? Manages to ding just one. Doesn't get the kill, and the defuse comes through. A little bit too much faith in his Omen there on site, and isn't able to secure and deny the defuse.
It's not so much lost faith as it is positioning. Spider just got completely separated under Hell. That Blaze Wall just did not allow him to get back into that fight in time. And even though the Hunter's Fury comes out, it didn't manage to pick up anything, and it didn't manage to cancel the defuse either. Crashies going to be on that B site. Could potentially go for some very aggressive plays, going to try and get that recon bolt right through the window. Same as we always see Slovers try and play. In fact, it's going to be the shock dart this time around. As T1 think they can still go mid, and Envy really not a lot of control there right now.
Oh, that's fantastic. Spider teleports himself up onto that top side. Really should have seen that one coming, but you never know when it's going to be there. You know that realistically it can be there, but you never know for sure that it will be. And that's a good first pick for T1. As yes, as you said, it looks like they're going for a push through mid. Now they're going to have to contest with Food and his curveballs. The dark cover here just to give them a little bit of space, but Food opting to push out. He's got the Owl drone. He'll have the information from Crashies. We'll be able to tell him exactly what's happening as he opts not to push through. Spike moving back through Catwalk towards A site. They knew they got one pick on A site. Envy seem to have a read on this as we see Crashies moving towards A site as well, kind of lingering in the spawn. Oh no, he's moving back towards B. They haven't read it.
In fact, they're moving even further away from A. Sam, this is absolutely devastating. T1 don't know that there is totally 30 seconds on the side of Envy. And in fact, they're even throwing in so much utility. Flashpoint coming out. But T1, they're using everything for absolutely nothing. They can just get this for free.
Well, I suppose they didn't know that. They didn't really have too much utility to work with there, which is surprising. They've got a Sova and a Cypher. They must have... Either they'd already used all of that utility previously, or they just didn't want to risk anything. And of course, the Cypher, as I say that, Brax is on the other side of the map. He's chilling in mid somewhere. So they didn't really have that information available to them, didn't want to risk it. They throw out the Rolling Thunder, and Envy, they're just going to save. They realize they do not have the numbers. There is literally no point in going for this. They're just going to hang out in B side, hold each other's backs, and keep hold of those guns.
Yeah, both teams going for the very much commit absolutely everything to make sure that you're going to be able to get yourself into this round as nicely as possible. Envy managing to keep 3 players alive, and now they can really try and contest T1, because something that we're seeing is Envy just don't have control of this mid in the way that defense on Ascent really want control of mid. They don't have the weaponry to try and stand up to try and stem T1's aggression. Instead, they have to wait and see what T1 want to push onto the mid and then react with utilities like that Aldrum, like that dark cover that we got to see come out. But they still haven't been able to get enough points, enough kills to be able to afford that one weapon that is immediately going to be a massive turning point in this defense and how T1 is going to be able to actually commit onto these points. And that's the operator.
And Envy really need to win this round because their economy is somewhat in a shambles. They're kind of forcing here to try and give themselves an edge as they push through, but we need to bear in mind, Brax and Spider are 1 ult point away from having their ultimates. That's the neural threat and the teleport, and that's so good for bait and switch potential. And knowing T1, I mean, I've seen some fantastic combos that they've managed to pull through here, so there's definitely potential here for them to use that as well. We're going to be going for the mid control here. We spoke about that. It's very, very important. But Envy putting a little bit more bodies in mid here, and Food immediately get a pick off onto Skadoodle, and that is bad news for T1. They're not going to have that jet available for the entry. And they don't have another duelist. They've got the Breach who can potentially entry, but this is going to make it really difficult for them to get onto site without some sort of a bait.
Well, they're waiting to figure out what exact point they want to try and push on. Seems like it's going to be that B push already moving for Pizza into market. Crashies thinks he has movement in B main, and that is the Cypher creating so much noise. Envy think they're coming from a completely different angle. This is that same bait and switch that you talked about.
30 seconds
really
left.
Being quite masterful at pulling off.
But T1 are playing this very well, and Envy playing very safe here, keeping bodies everywhere. Now that recon bolt's going to give a little bit of information. Mume's in a little bit of trouble there as we see T1 pushing all the way into the spawn here. Well, the spike makes its way towards site, but gets taken down by Crashies all the way from the back of site. Gets wall banged through. Now spike has just been picked up by Brax. Basically man alone. He's got AZK beside him to back him up, but they do realize that there will be a push from spawn. Or at least they expect it. Not that it matters. They took way too long, and isn't that the story of these two teams, Mark?
Absolutely. T1 can be very hesitant, and they take a very long time deciding which point they actually want to properly commit onto. But now if you're Envy, you don't have to be quite as slow. You were able to get that round, we talked about it, that was one of the rounds that you absolutely had to win to try and equalize that economy, and now they're coming in heavy armor and rifles. So they can finally try and go for a little bit more aggression. Whether they want to peek out from A main, or whether we're going to see a little bit more of that mid control coming out.
Ooh.
Looks like it's going to be neither.
Cage trigger.
Recon Bolt spots out Brax. Shock Dart won't get any value. Surprising that we don't see Crashies running the Odin this time around, but they know that Brax is there, so they're going to be holding on to that, suspecting a potential B push. This time around, however, they're going back to their default. They've got 3 moving towards A. Oh, the fire through the cage. Spider reads that so well. And now they've made a ton of noise on A. So we can already see the rotation. They're kind of half committing. They're not sure if they want to pull the rotation just yet, because of course they know that T1 have been doing this kind of bait and switch thing. And we kind of saw that coming because of course the spike was always on B. It was never anywhere near A. They 3-stacked A just in case there was some sort of utility gathering or information gathering utility there to make it seem like they were going to go for the A push. But they're going for the B here. It's a hard stack, and there's still 2 players of Envy just chilling over on the A side. If T1 push now, they should be able to get the plant.
30 seconds left.
In and quickly, there's only 30 seconds left. And Envy are going to be doing their absolute darndest to delay the fight as long as they possibly can so reinforcements can rotate from A.
Great work from T1 here. They moved decisively, which is somewhat different for T1. We're kind of used to them playing very, very safe. And yeah, last 2 players from Envy, they're just like, yeah, you know what? Let's go hang out on A. A's really beautiful this time of year, Moxie. I don't know if you've been there, but it's a pretty place.
I don't know. Maybe send me a postcard next time Envy decide to save there, because they're trying to keep those Phantoms safe. They know that they just came off of a bad buy round, and they don't want their economy to be back in that unfavorable position. Because yes, you have advantage when you're on that defending side. You have all of the space that the attackers are trying to move on for absolute free. And to be honest, you can sometimes just pick a corner and wait for them to move past you. And if they don't spot you, that will result in a pick. But the second you start losing all of these weaponry fights and you're lacking that firepower, T1 is going to get a lot more aggressive. And aggressive teams on attack, on Ascent, are so hard to shut down if you're not able to withstand the spray that comes in from afar before the fight properly starts.
And kind of feeling for Envy right now, we haven't seen the operator come out at all. And it's just because their economy has not lent itself to that buy. I mean, Mummy can buy one, but at this point in the game, you don't want to opt into that just yet. You don't want to potentially ruin your economy. And if we take a look at the ultimates available here.
Get out of my way!
Spike drop.
Skadoodle has got the knives. And as I say that, knives get popped. Doesn't go in too aggressive this time. This is more of a defensive ultimate, kind of preemptively. As they start to push onto site, he's going to be expecting to need to use that. But again, slow and steady is the name of the game here. Hunter's Fury will come out as well. Doesn't manage to get anything, but tries a little bit of space. Skadoodle gets taken down mid-knife. Boot manages to get a follow-up onto Spider as well. And that is the majority of T1 completely dismantled. The 5v3. Oh my goodness, Boot, that's illegal. Goes for such a ballsy play with the run it back. Knows that he can survive it. Pushes straight through the smoke. Brax manages to get a pick onto Envy. Pretty good, knowing that their economy isn't the best right now. But at a 2v5
One enemy
situation,
remaining.
I'm not sure. Make that a 1v5.
Well, maybe count that number again, Sam. Brax got just completely separated again. Envy do such a good job of this, of just separating T1's forces. Because that hot hand just completely relegated that Cypher into that corner the entire point. Now we're going to see Envy feel confident enough that that point difference isn't quite as large as it's been these previous rounds. Now they think it's time to go for that operator. It's going to be Mummy that's picking up, normally playing the Jet for this team, so no surprise there. But you don't have that survivability. It's not the same as a Jet where you can just tailwind out if you don't manage to hit the shot. Just the same as with the Reyna, if you manage to hit the shot, you can't use your Devour to try and keep your health bar up as you hightail it out.
And of course, T1 making a lot of noise on A, making it look like it's going to be an A hit. And as the spike slowly makes its way towards A, it looks like, yes, it might in fact be, but they need to be careful. Caboose has Empress ready to pop at any moment. And of course, Mame chilling there with the operator, just waiting for someone to push through. I don't believe Mame has fired a shot yet. So they don't know that the operator is in play on A just yet. And that's always a dangerous position to be in. But T1 seem to have realized this is a dangerous place to be. They've made a ton of noise. They've done their due diligence. It's time to move out towards B site. With the Phoenix wall having just gone down, they know that that's no longer in play, and they have an opportunity to try and push through.
Envy aren't getting antsy on their defense, though. They're holding this really nice split angle. Look at that coverage on B. Sova and Breach in Sova and Phoenix rather in unity. So the second one of them gets spotted out,
30
the other
seconds
one can
left.
immediately try to make that move. T1 being a little bit more cautious once again, leaving themselves not enough to move in.
That's a huge Hunter Fury that comes through there, but actually doesn't manage to get
One
it.
enemy
It's really
remaining.
surprising. Food continues to be the MVP of this team, manages to get 3. That's a lot of cleanup from Envy, and once again, T1 just taking a little bit too long on that trigger finger. They're pushing in really slowly. They seem uncertain of where they, which site they want to hit and how they want to do it. They do a lot of baiting, a lot of faking, but they don't follow through once they've done that. And because they take so long, Envy have time to rotate, and Envy's retake position has been so good. We'll take a look at this replay here. Food. Oh man, he actually dies trying to get a different gun because he runs out of bullets. So thank you, GoPuff, for that fantastic replay. We'll head back into the game here. Crashy's still not running that Odin, much to my chagrin. We'll see, maybe he brings that up later on.
It is a pretty predictable play though, when you can see that Tier 1 really don't like pushing B main early on in the round because of how known that Sober strategy is. And then they're going to go quite, no hesitation, right into A site, full stacking, and Envy just are not left with time to blink.
T1, oh no, Dazed has the operator, misses the shot, and Crashies is able to follow up and get that kill. Now Food on the lurk. He wants to be coming around through A main. And no one's watching it right now. Spider might turn to check. Oh, the shots fired there will give away his position. He does use the run it back to get a little bit of information. Hasn't spotted out anyone just yet. Not able to get a kill. The run it back forces him back out of sight. The last two players are watching this entry for dear life. The jump peek just to get the information. That was never going anywhere.
Did they manage to pick the operator up though? That's the big question, Sam.
I don't think so.
It looked like they just
it would have been on Brax to pick it up, and oh, sorry, not Brax, AZK. Nah, he didn't get it.
Nah.
The moment was
Mummy's
too
got
tense,
another one. Mummy's got another one, and now with your Envy, I'm still waiting to see this very aggressive peak with that operator where you immediately try and pick up that first frag and force the attacking side to either full save, where they just don't want to push in on a point with one member already down, or they just go aggressive and they make mistakes.
The aggressive off is very difficult to do when you're on the open.
Yeah. They sense that there's an operator, they heard the shot, and Skadoodle's doing everything he possibly can to try and close up that distance so the operator becomes far less powerful.
Beautiful wallbang there. Skadoodle manages to take down the recon bolt, but it's not enough. He knows exactly, well, Foodie knows exactly where Skadoodle is, and that's, again, the entry is down. And I gotta say, I gotta point out, T1, when they push in aggressively, they do really well. And that's because we know Envy tends to be a slightly more passive team. So why T1 aren't opting for really aggressive plays is surprising or baffling, I suppose is the word to use here. But they are going for that mid control this time again. And let's see if it works out a little bit better for them. The door has already been closed and Brax is bringing up the rear on a little bit of a lurk towards B main. There's still a 3 stack on A. So again, if they push through aggressively before the rotate comes through, they have a chance to get onto site.
30 seconds left.
Careful now.
Well, Envy know the push is coming on B, but they're still keeping a presence on A.
Oh.
And we're gonna see
Recon
that
bolt
unfair
spots out.
number fight.
Enemy down.
T1 has all of the advantages, but they don't have the natural cover. The boathouse is able to find the safety to pick one of them off. But
10 seconds left.
Now it's the question of getting that recontest. Caduceus going to use Blade to try and crush anyone out and get them both safely in, but no one's actually caught out by it.
Brings it down to 2v2. Omens versus Cyphers. It all comes down to this. The two lurking boys. One has an operator but misses the shot. There's a lot of smoke in the way here. Smokes and cages abound.
One
There's a
enemy
lot of
remaining.
denied sight lines, and while that's happening, the time is ticking down. Spider will pick up his third kill
enemy
of the
remaining.
round. One man standing. Lume will take down Spider. Oh, the fake. He's gonna run out of time though. Oh, he's gonna find him in the front! Like ships in the night! And it's Brax that's able to get the 180 takedown Mume.
Picks up the up tier.
Survives the bomb.
Picks up the op. Nami actually traded in the op. Goes for the Phantom. It's so hard to go for that recontest. That really close quarters fight with an operator. If you miss that one shot, that reload animation, it's grueling. It's excruciatingly long. But now we're gonna see both sides have an operator. Both sides can make a play for mid. And already Mummy is in a much more aggressive position on this defense than we've seen in a very long time. Going to try and find that first pick immediately.
Once again, moving back to their kind of comfortable default, where they've got the A split push And the Cypher all the way towards B, lurking that side.
Nowhere to run!
This is a beautiful camera from FNS. Interesting how Fury comes up. They didn't really have any information to back it up, but he does manage to get a few things. FNS times that so perfectly, swings out as the Hunter's Fury ends, but it's not enough to secure the site. Spike has been picked up once again. Mume gets forced out by the Aftershock. And a nice dark cover there to deny the sight lines as well. Plant is good. It's a 4v3 here. And these post-plant positions are vital. I love seeing that Skadoodle's moved all the way into Wine. We're going to see Phoenix pushing up here. Oh, Skadoodle spotted him out, called it out. Doesn't need to call it out, gets the kill. It's the 4v2, and now Crashies and Food. Or Crashies and Mame, rather. They're going to need to save.
Envy wanted to go for that sort of pincer movement. They wanted to have presence on A main. But because Skadoodle was keeping a watchful eye on A1, you just weren't able to set up that cross angle. And so all Envy can do is just rotate out, keep the weapons, keep them from the shadows, and find themselves another point behind T1.
And this is yet another round where Envy go in hard, go in aggressive, and win the round. Because Envy
last round in the half
to react. Now this is the important thing, right? So this is the last round before the swap. Everybody's going in hard. We've got Blade Storm online for Skadoodle. We've got Teleport. We've got Neural Theft for Envy. There's a lot of ultimates to use here. But it's last round. And when things swap up, this is where the real test of metal is going to be. So we'll get through this last round, and it's imperative for Envy to get another point on the board here. They're already in a good spot in terms of how many points they have, but they want to just give themselves a little bit more of an edge coming into the second half.
No, you want to talk about good points. T1 have managed to gain 7 on their attacking rank. Lovely for that rank spot. They want to pick up the 8. This one already popped. Trying to move in aggressively and find a pick. Daze is able to search out Wine and picks out Yogurts, and that signals away from T1 to very safe.
One enemy remaining.
To A, they've got control on Rafters, they've got control of main. Spike can easily get there as poor old Food is left out in courtyard to try and keep himself alive.
Oh. Ooh, actually manages to get a kill.
Spike planted.
Not quite able to get the second. He does, of course, know that there is one person there. Oh! The information gets fed to Spider, and he just hard holds that angle. And that's
switching
one
sides.
More round in the bag for T1. And do I need to say it, Moxie? Another aggressive round for T1 that works out.
And unfortunately for Envy as well, it's so easy to just chain together points when you're on the defense. We've seen it happen time and time again. Teams come in with, 4 rounds accrued on their attack, and they're still able to win. T1 are coming in with 8.
Oh man, this was so spicy from Brax, that lurk. And this ballsy play from Food. There have been some amazing plays here from these players as we move into our second half. Thank you once again, GoPup, for, powering up these replays. We wouldn't be able to do it without you.
If you want to talk about power up, I have to play both Omens, but Envy and T1 have been doing such a good job when it comes to these dark covers. That's been a big reason why we haven't been seeing as much operator kills as you would expect, and that's the reason as well why Envy are currently completely avoiding going mid-market. They just don't want to go into those dark covers. So T1, yes, they've lost a player, but they've got enough time to actually get the rotation when they see where Envy is heading.
Spike looking planted. Solid here for this very first pistol round. They do manage to get the spike down, and now it's all about post-plant positions, and they have every angle covered. Cypher in the tree with Omen for some good backup there. The rest are playing more on site. Nobody holding... Oh, there we go. There's the Sova out in Wine, so we've got that covered as well. They have every possible angle covered here, and it's going to be so difficult when the entirety of T1 are trying to funnel through heaven.
One enemy remaining.
Spots out the recon ball before he's able to get it off. That gives all the information in the world to Envy, and they just clean up.
That's the risk when you use that much utility very early on in the round. You just don't have it if it comes to that question of the recontest. Because they suffered. They all funneled themselves through Rafters. If they'd had a dark cover, then it would be much easier to be able to safely pass through Rafters and onto point and properly try and challenge Envy. But because they don't, because they just don't have anything left in the bank to actually try and obscure the line of sight, except a flashpoint, which should be noted comes in a little bit late. Envy are just able to keep a hold of that position, keep a hold of that sight line, and completely choke them out.
Now, Brax has bought a shorty this round, but he's not holding anywhere angled that he can get off some quick fire shots, you know, like in a choke point, like you might do with a Bucky. So that's interesting to note. This is slightly different to what we've seen from Brax in the past.
Revealing
Let's see
area.
if that does manage to bear fruit, as we've got a 4-man stack for T1 over towards the A site, and it's just the lone Dazed over here on B. The door starts to come down.
Deploying drone.
Spider way back. Walking
Oh,
around
Sam.
with that spike.
Look at B! Look at the
And this is what I'm
presence
saying.
of
There's
B.
a 4 stack on B, and there's no one there. And we've even got Dazed starting to rotate. He's kind of pushing through mid here, but there's literally nothing on the B site to hold anything back. They're expecting an A hit. That's what came through in the last round. But
Well, they're
bearing
not
in
quite
mind, this is
expecting
them.
it.
Right here.
More
But this is
than
also them
hoping
pulling
for
back,
it.
right? They're going
Spike
for retake.
planted.
So they give up the B site, and now they push through as a team. What's important here is, do they push in impatiently, or do they wait until everyone's in position? That's what's going to make the difference.
Q1, do you even go for this? They were full stacking A, they were hoping, they were rolling the dice, they'd already lost that last round, they were coming in on a broken buy. They're committing to this, but they're just dying sadly
player
and
remaining.
alone, Someone get this team a stat nav, they've been lost all around the map because it's understandable, right? When you're in that position, you lose that first round after swap, you don't have the best economy, you've got to try and roll the dice, full stack on a point, and hope that the other team is going to be coming to that position. It doesn't happen. You've got a 50-50 chance, this isn't Haven, there's only 2 points to play around with. But when it doesn't happen, you've just got to accept that. You can't try and move halfway across the map to get to a point where you have absolutely zero control of any of the space because you've given up absolutely every single angle willingly. Make a decision.
And now, there's the Odin play from Dazed. We were waiting for it on the previous round, or the previous half. It finally will come out, but starts to fire a little too early. I don't think the recon bolt came out, didn't really have any information there. But Spider managing to get a pick off from Cubby, and that's huge. It does get traded out though, but it gives a ton of information as well. Got the paranoia ready to pop. Opts not to use it now. Instead, they'll have the cage, and of course, there is the notification if someone moves through the cage. They wait for it to expire. And now Envy just pull back. And this is yet another example of how Envy play really, really slowly. They're trying to be methodical, and I can appreciate that as they start to move towards the A site. They know that there's at least a 2 stack over in mid, and it is a 4v4. So because they're the attackers, that does favor them to an extent because they're pushing together as a unit. They need to make something happen here. They've spotted out Brax.
Cage trigger.
You've got to go fast because you may have spotted out that Cypher, but now that it's over.
30 seconds left.
Dave's waiting to move into position on Rafters. SNS.
Spike planted.
That Spectre is going to try and keep a hold of that one, but it is so hard if you don't have the superior firepower to win that fight.
One player
Piled
remaining.
against you in all of Tier 1. They're just able to keep a hold, keep themselves out of line of sight as SNS. He's going to be able to hit Daze, but that's all he's going to be able to get is Tier 1. Managed to pick up a 9th point to set themselves up finally on this defense.
Envy had a really good attack there. I say really good. Okay, hold up. So I definitely was concerned, and I expressed the concern about how slowly they pushed. But once they actually decided to execute, they got onto site, they had some good angles. They didn't waste too much time because they were still able to actually get the bombs off. And that's what's so important there. They made it difficult for T1 to, make a comeback. And the A side is so hard to take on, particularly if you've got the entire team funneling through heaven. We've seen it time and time again. So Envy in that regard did well, but I want to see them play a little bit faster because T1, they're just playing really well here. They had a pretty solid offense, particularly when they rushed, and they're having a pretty good defense here as well.
I really love as well that Q1 has got a lot of control right now in the main. On A as well. They've even
Camera
got a
taken
presence
out.
on mid, so they're making sure that every single place that Envy tries to approach, they're going to be spotted out.
Again, they're going
And
for
they're trying
A.
Shot down.
It's kind of their default here.
Tripwire
The split
destroyed.
push, 3 towards A, 2 towards B.
Tripwire destroyed.
But the spike is moving towards A as well, and of course they're running into a 3-stack. And they forced out a lot of utility from Envy's Phoenix. He had to use the hot hands and the wall just to heal himself, and that's not ideal. Of course, the hot hands will come back online, but that's kind of it, you know? It doesn't have that wall
Only half of
anymore.
Envy's team is online at the moment, though. They've got the Cypher. They've got the Phoenix as well,
Here's the
but they're
push.
still waiting for
Joke's
these
over.
reinforcements to
You're
come on
dead.
through before they can properly push. And T1 haven't actually rotated quite yet, and we do have a window to get in there.
30
and
seconds
force
left.
That recontest to come through. They
Spike
just want to plant
planted.
and actually stand that timer, and then they can move back into those repositions underneath Hell. So T1 can't just go for Raptors play. They've got to drop down and properly contest this.
Envy push onto site with the run it back, and that is huge. They're able to get in, but oh my goodness, what is this Odin spread? Almost manages to get to. They're exceptionally low, and all it takes is Skadoodle to push in
player
and get the
remaining.
cleanup. Backed up by, of course, AZK. They push on the point, and unfortunately, those post-plant positions just
Thanks.
not going to be enough here for Envy. And this is where T1's
Flawless.
slow and steady approach
We
really
all did
works
our
out for
part.
them. The plant comes in, they don't rush in impatiently. That has been a tale throughout this tournament. Teams that push out way too impatiently. They wait a little bit, they move in as a team, they're able to get the defuse.
I mean, that Odin play was straight up demonic, and Dazed is going to keep a hold of that very weapon, because we're seeing it has utility not just on that very original aspect of B main, but it also really forces the other team to not hide behind those covers. You can't just hole up in Hell, otherwise you are going to get absolutely shredded through that wall of Dazed. Let's to begin things once again with that Paul's Brisk. Skadoodle's actually even in the corner of B main. So T1 doubling down on this defense. Unfortunately for them though, Envy isn't in immediately.
Well, T1 they should be aware that it's an anti-eco. Envy are running in with like sheriffs and not much else to their name here, so they're just gonna kind of monkey in and get themselves ready for the next round. And this is
player
a perfect
remaining.
example of what happens on an eco round. You rush in, you try and get some exit frags. Crashies manages to take down one, but you know, anti-eco is what it is.
They're coming in with a couple of ultimates. Unfortunately for Envy, they're also very conditional and situational. Right, with the Reyna, we often see a lot of Reynas hold on to that ult, the Empress, until they're actually able to get that first pick, so you can have the full extent of the ultimate benefit using the Devour, using even your invisibility and fades to get up close without being punished. Hunter's
Here.
Fury 2, you can pop it at the beginning of the round, but then you're working on gas work. It's much easier, much more rewarding the longer you hold on to it. Skadoodle's not even going to wait. It's going to dash straight into A main with that Blade Storm and find
One
out
enemy
absolutely
remaining.
nothing. What was it we were praising about T1 before and their patience and how it's going to be rewarded?
I mean, they had the ultimates. They tried to push out
Spike
aggressively.
planted.
That may have worked had that not been a full A hit. I think if it had only been like 1 or 2 people there and not 4, Skadoodle may have gotten away with that. But unfortunately, he dashes out into an enemy team. And the swing from the rest of his team is good. Brax doesn't look behind him, gets taken down. And that's finally a point on the board here for Envy. They had to wait. They had to eco it out last round, but they were able to buy the last round. And this time around, it looks like they're going for... This is a difficult situation
this
for
is a
Caboose.
nice
He has to force to keep up with the rest of his team, but that puts him on 0. Thankfully, next round, if they win this round, his team is able to buy for him. But take a look at the rounds, Moxie. They're spending a ton of money here, and if they lose this, it's match point.
Oh, but T1 as well are forking out. They're sensing that it's match point, and they are going to do everything they can to cripple Envy to stop this fight before it even starts. That is an Odin and an Operator. The two most expensive
camera is
guns in the
destroyed.
entire game. Brax isn't even allowing the wall to come through because it can provide cover for Envy if it becomes a question of the recontest. So So T1 making a lot of noise, making sure that Envy know that they have to commit into this. It's all bait play though, because Envy are going to keep right in with T1 that is fully rotating. Oh, Brax! You are monstrous. Manages to get them while they're back to turn. The Hunter's Fury will come out, manages to ding Brax. He manages to jump out of it and not get killed.
Give me a call.
But is it going to be enough? FNS manages to get 2 kills on his own.
standing.
2v3, uses Maneural Theft to get that information, and that's the perfect way to use this ultimate. But he's coming up against Skadoodle, and it's not going to be enough. And that takes us to, yes, Moxie, match point.
Match point.
Oh, and Envy. The situation is dire for this team. Bulldog going to be coming out for crashes.
Here.
Caboose. Caboose needs Team Charity to help out as well. And if you're T1, you didn't lose the operator. You didn't lose that threat. You can already see this defense. They know how aggressive they can get, that Envy can't really stand up, that Envy are going to do everything in their absolute power to either use so much utility early on to make sure that they don't get picked, or just aggressively stack onto one of these points until T1 can just come divide up and conquer. They've got a presence in B main, they've got a presence in A gardens. What they don't have is garden.
Flash out! The hunt begins!
Poor Caboose coming into this round with nothing but a ghost to his name. He does pop the Empress though. Oh, he managed to pick up a gun off of his dead colleague, comrade. You know what? What are friends for, right? So he manages to pick up the Phantom here. It is the 4v5, but as I said, he's popped the Empress. That's going to give him a little bit of an advantage here. Spots out the Owl drone. Now, this is where the tension builds up. This is map point. And they're kind of stomping around, making a ton of noise, making it dangerously obvious where they are. Caboose manages to get a kill here over on the B side. Can he get 2? No, gets taken down by Dazed Odin, but the numbers advantage is still firmly in favor of T1. The spike is here on the B side. Oh, he doesn't manage to kill the Recon Bolt. They know exactly where he is. He's going to try and push towards B side, link up with his Cypher, and not move together.
30 seconds left.
They've got
Certainly a choice. I mean, they need to, but they don't have the time, and they don't realize that Brax is right there. The plant's going to come in, but this is going to be a pincer movement.
Right there,
oh, there we go. Now they know he's there. I love these jump
Spike
peeks.
planted.
You don't really get too much information out of it, but if somebody shoots at you, it tells you exactly where that person is.
Enemy remaining.
Oh, didn't need that information, as there's the pincer. The 2 get taken down. That's going to be a defuse, and that's going to be the first point in this best of 3 going to T1. Moxie, did you see this
Envy's
coming?
hands.
Defenders win.
I mean, Envy's hands were just forced, right? Anytime another side, especially on the defense, is able to access that operator, and the Odin as well paired up with it, that's 2 entire sections of the map that you either can't go anywhere near, or you just risk immediately dying. We see it so often. B main completely shut down by the Sova with just spray damage alone, and mid shut down completely, or even sometimes A main if teams really aggressively want to push through A main with an operator and then get back onto the point because they can fall back onto rafters, or you tend to have someone waiting in the wings in somewhere like garden or tree in case they do get pressured on, where you can lend a helping hand out and make sure that they don't lose the most important weapon in the game for a simple blunder like positioning. And honestly, as soon as any team is up against that, it becomes such a mountain to climb. Ascent has always been one of those hard ones where if you just don't have the firepower, you can't really close up the distance easily because of how these sightlines are positioned.
And now we're going to have these instant replays that are brought to you by GoPuff, the official delivery partner of Nerd Street Gamers. Use promo code NERDSTREET when you sign up on GoPuff, and you'll get $4 off your first 4 orders. GoPuff, ordered in seconds, delivered in minutes. And I just want to follow up a little bit on what you were saying there. Dazed, it felt like that Odin was used more as like suppressive fire than to actually get kills, because he barely ever used the recon bolt. It was just like, there's an Odin here, we're gonna force the enemy team to rotate either through mid or through A. And for the most part, it did work out. But the big story here for these two teams, we kind of highlighted it at the top, was tempo. When these teams play too passively, it backfires phenomenally. But that's going to be it for this very first map. We're going to be back in just a very short break for map 2, guys. You do not want to miss this one. everything on the line for these two teams. We'll be back in just a minute.